All right, so we're here today talking about one position scales. If you're a student of mine, you probably already have my pre-flesh scales packet. That's what I'll kind of be working from today. So let's start by asking, what are one position scales? Why do we do them? So one position scales are designed to kind of illuminate the patterns of half steps and whole steps in the left hand when doing scales. Unlike piano players, we really don't have the benefit of white and black keys to show us where the half steps and whole steps are. So for string players, it's really helpful to deconstruct 3-octave scales by playing them in every key and in every position. Really thinking about the shape in the left hand as you're playing in each position. So I'm going to be talking today about finger patterns, and there are really only 4 patterns that we can have in our left hand. Pattern 1 is where we have a half step between 3 and 4. Pattern 2, we have the half step between 2 and 3. Pattern 3, half step is between 1 and 2. And pattern 4 is where we have no half steps. It's just all whole steps. So as we play a scale in one position, we always start with our first finger on the C string. So I'm going to be using the key of C major for the purposes of today's demonstration. But if you're in a key that has a D flat, you would start on D flat. So we always start with our first finger on our lowest string. For viola, that's C string. So here, my first finger is on D. And if I walk up in the key signature, I have D, E, F, G. So my hand position, my finger pattern for this string is going to be finger pattern number 2 with a half step between second and third finger. Okay. Now on G string, first finger on A, I have A, B, C, D. It's the same pattern, pattern number 2. And as I move to the D string, first finger is on E, I have E, F, G, and A. Pattern changes. Now I'm in pattern 3, where I have my half step between the first and second finger. And on A string, A, B, C, D, E. That's also pattern number 3, right? We have a half step here. So we play through all the notes in this key in first position, like so. So that's first position, and we do this in all positions all the way up to 7th position, which is where your octave harmonic is, right? And as we go up the positions, the finger pattern changes. So for example, if I go from first position to second position, now my first finger is on E, and my finger pattern is E, F, G, A. Now I've got finger pattern 3 on the C string, right? It's also finger pattern 3 on the G string. So it changes for each string and for each position and for each key. So it's really important to kind of familiarize yourself with the patterns. Why would we do this? Well, when you're playing scales, or you're playing pretty much anything in a given key signature, trying to think of each note individually is a process. It's a mental process that takes time and effort. We can simplify that by thinking in terms of patterns. So I can think pattern 2, 2, 3, 3, and that's a lot easier for my brain to process than thinking of 16 notes. So if you look in your packet, if you have it, there is a page. I'll show you guys. I'll bring it up on my screen. And there's a page that looks like this. This gives you the 4 possible left-hand patterns. It explains where your half step is. Here in pattern 1, it's between 3 and 4, right? And this also tells you what the scale degree will be of your first finger. Now, if you don't know scale degrees yet, don't worry about that. This is a theory thing, but it's something that's good to think about. So memorizing which patterns correspond to which number is this first step. And then we have this grid here, right? Finger pattern stations. So this shows you what the finger pattern is on each string, starting with C, G, D, and A for each mode, right? If you're thinking in terms of modal scales, it also tells you like where your first finger is, if it's on the tonic, the supertonic. These are, again, scale degrees. So if you don't know anything about scale degrees, ignore this part. But this would be the first scale degree, second scale degree, third scale degree, so on and so forth. So you can think of your scales in terms of these finger patterns through the various positions. And that makes it a lot easier to navigate the scales when you get to faster tempos, right? And that's kind of the ultimate goal of this exercise, is we want to be comfortable in our left hand frame. We want to have really clear intonation. We want to have really clear coordination between our left and right hands in all positions. And we want to be able to lay down our fingers in scale patterns quickly when we need to. So to do the exercise, again, we start with our first finger on the C string on D, and we go all the way up, and then we do this little turn at the top. That's just to make the bowing come out correctly when we do the bowing patterns. So you're going to want to do this little turn thing at the top. And we go through every position, and that's what this page is all about, is just laying out all the notes in every position, and this example here is in the key of C. So then here's where we get to the real meat and potatoes of it. This is the exercise as we play it, as we do it in context. So we start by setting a metronome at 40 beats per minute. And the metronome is non-negotiable. You have to use a metronome every time you do this. I also recommend, if you're just starting out with this exercise, to also use a drone. So whatever key you're working in, find a drone. There's a really good one on YouTube called Cello Drones for Improvisation and Tuning. I'll link that in the description box for this video. That's a really great resource to help keep you accurate with your intonation as you're building your oral skills. Eventually, you want to be able to do this exercise without a drone, but if you need to use one in the beginning, I highly recommend it. So we start by setting a metronome and playing through with 40 beats per minute to the half note. And then we double that speed in the left hand. So then we do quarter notes, and then eighth notes, and then 16th notes. So we're getting progressively faster with the movements in the fingers of the left hand. But in the bow, we're always using a whole bow, all the way from the frog to the tip. We use a whole bow, and we use correct bow divisions. So when we're playing half notes, each note is a half of a bow. When we're playing in quarter notes, each note is a quarter of the bow. In eighth notes, it's an eighth of the bow, so on and so forth. So just to kind of demonstrate how we do this exercise, I'm going to go ahead and play through a cycle in first position in C major. So let me start up my metronome. That was not correct. There we go. Okay. So that's an entire cycle in first position. From there, I move to second position and I repeat the exercise all the way up in the key signature until we get to seventh position. Okay? And then as you cycle through these, you do a key a day. And if we go back to the very first page here, there's a little box where you can check off, okay, today I did my C major cycle at 40 beats per minute, and then the next day you would do G major, and then D, and then A, so on and so forth, until you have done all the keys in all the positions at 40 beats per minute. Then we take it up to 60 beats per minute, right? So we keep increasing the speed, getting faster and faster, more and more efficient with our left hand. Now, a couple of things to consider as we are playing through this exercise. A couple of things to think about with the left hand is, first of all, we always use fourth fingers. We never use open strings. As we're playing through the exercise, we want to make sure we're being really cognizant of the shape of our left hand, right? So we're talking about left hand frame, meaning like how our hand is situated over the fingerboard. You'll notice my fingers are not out here to the side. I'm not like dropping my fingers underneath my fingerboard. All four fingers are oriented over the string that I'm playing on. And as I go from one string to the next, my arm is coming with me. I'm not doing anything weird with my left wrist in order to get my fingers where they need to be. Everything is just nicely oriented over the string so that the fingers can fall cleanly and evenly and securely into the fingerboard. And from this angle, you'll see that my thumb is in a nice centered position in my hand, right? Rather than having my thumb be back here by my first finger where it's likely to create gripping and tension, I'm keeping my thumb nice and centered and nice and relaxed. You should be able to do a little windshield wiper thumb, give your thumb a little wiggle anytime you need to make sure that your third and fourth fingers are really well supported and your first and second fingers are able to flex backwards when they need to, right? And to keep the tension out of the hand as we do the exercise. Now, as your fingers are falling onto the strings, it's important to think about that motion coming from the bass knuckles. And these are your bass knuckles here. These right here are your bass knuckles. But rather than thinking about the movement of the fingers falling onto the string as coming from here, we actually want to think about this movement as coming from here. So if you can feel in your hand right about where this crease is, that's really where your finger joints are. So if you think about the movement coming from here, think about your fingers falling really heavily into the string from that point. It's a very different motion than if I think about the movement coming from here. That's a lot stiffer and more restricted versus the motion coming from here. Now I've really got a sense of weight of my fingers falling into the fingerboard. Nice rounded fingers falling onto the very tips of the fingers. Even for the pinky, nice rounded pinky as we fall, right? So some considerations in the left hand. And then for the bow, it's really important to make sure that you've got a secure contact point that is either going to be like right over your F holes or maybe just a little bit on the bridge side of the F holes. We want to have really good weight into this string, really, really good tone. Because that tone is going to only help you with the intonation in the left hand. You're going to be able to hear the resonance of your notes much more easily and be able to adjust your intonation more easily. So we really want to get the string spinning. Kind of like feeling like your bow is resisting against the string. It's going to have kind of a sticky feeling to it. And this also goes for string crossings, right? Really smooth, really connected string crossings. So the left and right hands really have to work together for this exercise to work. And of course, you're also thinking about, your half steps and whole steps in your left hand. You're thinking about, the key signature that you're in, where are your flats and your sharps. So it's a really versatile and really, really kind of intense mental exercise as much as it is a physical exercise. So go slow, be patient with yourself. This is the kind of thing that you do a little bit every day and it comes together in time. And the more you do it, the more familiar the patterns become. And really, once you've done it for a while, it becomes like a meditative exercise almost. This is probably one of my favorite things to practice when I just really need to focus and I really need to key into myself and into my instrument. These one position scales are great for that. And these really lay a really firm foundation for how to approach 3 octave scales, and then later doing the various exercises out of the Flesh scale book, which is kind of like scale boot camp. So this is like a precursor to that. If it seems like a lot now, just know that it does get easier the more you do it. So, happy practicing. Be sure to always use your metronome. Always use your drone if you need it, and go make some music. Thanks.